Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Is the audio and video on? I do this each time. All right, so I'm going to talk about the athletes and even celebrities in that world in terms of what we might be able to learn from them and from the denials that they make. Interesting, when I'm out and about in life and uh, inevitably a conversation goes to, hey, what do you do for a living? What do you do in life? And if I get to anything about deception, the probably the most popular questions I get are about celebrities, uh, athletes, and we can mix those two together. Besides any type of crime that is or has captured the imagination through media, most crime obviously doesn't. And with athletes, with celebrities, with those that I think we might call privileged in different ways in life, we say always a little bit of patience, always a little bit of understanding. They have it rough too in life in spite of wealth, and their lives can be very difficult. They often, especially with the large amounts of money that they make, society values them very highly, so they have tremendous egos at times when it comes to money, being able to tell someone do this and do that for them, and they get in a lot of trouble. They make headlines, sometimes deliberately, sometimes not deliberately, but they still have their issues in life, and they still have things that they battle in spite of those advantages that they have. With athletes, it's easy to misinterpret even body language with them. You see something that appears to be very arrogant. It's a display of arrogance, and what could be behind that is an athlete that's terrified, competing at the highest level. So we don't always know. We like to listen to what someone has to say, and I allow the words to guide me. I allow the words to bring me to the truth. Now, when it comes to celebrities, I'm not a celebrity follower. I don't consider myself a fan. I admire some talent, but it pretty much ends there. And some people feel that analysis of celebrities isn't a worthwhile endeavor, especially when it comes to Hollywood actors and actresses. If you want to learn about dissociation or dissociate language, that is the place to learn it. And to what benefit is that? It's another aspect of human nature, and we find that language in sexual assault victims, particularly females who had suffered sexual abuse in childhood. They have that in their language. And so getting accustomed to the language of Hollywood, for example, and the headlines never end with that sort of thing. You're able to familiarize yourself with some of the language that will at times in a sexual abuse victim sound deceptive because they are dissociating away from reality. That's how they learn to survive in childhood. And quite a few celebrities have come from some pretty rough times in life and overcame a great deal. And so I think studying the language of anyone is valuable depending on your goals. If you're looking to have great depth in understanding of language, that's one way to do it. So I'm often asked when I'm out about, what about this celebrity? What about that celebrity? More females than males ask that. When it comes to sports, more males than females will ask, and they'll say, what about this particular athlete? What about that particular athlete? Did they use performance-enhancing drugs? Did they take testosterone? And so usually, depending on where I'm located, I try to focus in on a regional athlete. And so I'm in New England, I'm in Maine. And so talking about Boston Red Sox, Roger Clemens, for example, uh, or others, or it's easy to bring up the New York Yankees for the locals here because that gets them pretty riled up and the attention is right there. And so they'll ask about different players, and sometimes the response is very disappointed. Sometimes it's even a little bit of anger. You see how emotionally invested someone can be in something like that. And so again, always a little bit of patience with the mighty, with the wealthy, with the talented. They can be a little bit difficult. With athletes, it's interesting enough that a little bit different from the Hollywood celebrity. With an athlete, picture a baseball player who has been basically worshipped by adults since he was 12 years old. And that's going to impact the personality. That's going to be pretty difficult. And so their egos can get them in a lot of trouble. They begin to believe their own hype. They begin to believe that they're above natural consequences. Much like you see maybe at the Met Gala a couple nights ago, where celebrities, politicians, people that are called commonly the elite, were being served by masked workers, mask over the face. And supposedly, following the science, the person standing above that worker is not wearing a mask. I don't believe masks stop respiratory viruses in the least. Anyway, I think they're unhealthy and they impede, especially for children's growth. But we see the absurdity of that sort of thing, where someone is getting their picture taken and they're not concerned about the image or the optics that are being portrayed to the public. So there's a certain amount of loss of touch that people can experience through success in anything, any of us, where it's human nature is shared among us all. And so sometimes they'll say some really ridiculous things, and it's rich for analysis. So when we listen for a denial, and this particular topic is performance enhancing drugs, we come from one particular angle, which is inescapable, and that is, what would I say? And that is something that is just a reflex among all of us. It can be heavily tainted. It is projection or projective in nature, but it's going to be there. It's going to be there. And for those that are by nature very suspicious people, that can be quite tainted. The second input is from experience. And so if you've done, for example, if you've studied analysis and you've done a number of arson statements, and you begin to see the patterns of how people like that operate this way, how they sound, and you've studied deception detection to the point where you've done so many statements that you know what an innocent person sounds like. And even if we narrow it down to performance enhancing drugs, you know what a guilty person sounds like, you know what an innocent person sounds like. And so as you build that experience, it really works quite well. And what I do is I tap into other experts who are in this field or that field, where I'm able to glean from them their experiences in dealing with certain types of people, certain populations, including criminal. So performance enhancing drugs is something that we're going to ask, hey, what would I say? And what have I heard innocent or guilty people say before about that? So that's our expectation. When we begin with this, I'm going to trust his words to guide me. This is a football player, and I'm going to trust that his words will lead me to the truth. And that's not a type of moral or ethical belief. It's a practice in discerning deception and discerning truth. And so my expectation begins with this. I didn't use performance enhancing drugs. And that can stop the news articles, that can stop the statement itself. And if it's a press conference, I didn't use performance enhancing drugs. Do you have any questions? Because there's really nothing else the person can say. We call that the psychological wall of truth. There is a protection that comes. Now, it can be worn down when people don't believe in this. They're being accused over and over again. But at least initially, behind that psychological wall of truth, there's no need for me to issue a large statement. I didn't use performance enhancing drugs. I didn't take steroids. What can be said after that? Well, how did you test positive? I don't know. It's a mistake somewhere, but I didn't use them. Well, why should we believe you? I don't care if you believe me. I'm telling the truth. I didn't use performance enhancing drugs. And you can see that there's a brakes being shut on where the person is protected by the truth. By the truth. And so that's my expectation to hear. And so here's an objection, and I'll beat any of you to it on this one. And hopefully you are thinking of this, is what about someone that took a supplement that had something in it that was illegal? What about that? And that is if you ascribe to the FDA's email system, in spite of all the corruption, the FDA sends out an email when there's a drug recall, when there's a warning, when something has gone wrong, and it can be a medical device, it can be this or it can be that. But it often, because I've been subscribed to them since the COVID hit, it is often about supplements. For example, you see the ad for male enhancement, and then there's a recall because the product was made in China, and they actually use the drug that's involved in Viagra, and that was found in testing, so it's recalled, and that can cause all sorts of health problems for someone. There have been cases where certain banned substances have been added to performance-enhancing supplements, so that can happen. So you really can test for something that you didn't know you had in you. So what would we expect to hear then? I didn't use performance-enhancing drugs. If something was in my supplement, I didn't know about it. And again, that's going to end the conversation. The statement will end right there. Because there really isn't much more to say to that. Now, let's say that I did not use performance-enhancing drugs. Or let's move to a crime. Let's move to a bank robbery. So if I'm accused of robbing the local bank, and I begin my statement with, you know what, I've been going to the ATM machine for 10 years and I've never been caught robbing it. How dare you accuse me? And you'd laugh a little bit because that has nothing to do with the accusation of robbing a bank. But it does have a lot to do with what we should believe when someone's speaking. And this goes for a lot of different areas. So let's take a look at the statement. This is from Deandre Hopkins regarding performance-enhancing drugs. This was his statement. So another objection really quickly is, well, what if he didn't say this? What if his people did it? Because athletes with that kind of money have people. They have publicity, all that. And my response is that whoever wrote this will reveal their belief about it. Now, a lot of athletes and a lot of celebrities will write some of their own material. Some will insist upon it. You've seen this in criminal trials of someone that's terribly narcissistic. They want to speak for themselves. And they talk and they talk and they believe they're going to be persuaded, especially with actors and actresses. Alec Baldwin is one of them, the shooting, where he can make a video and go on and on and on. And his defense attorney's got to be pulling his hair out over that. But Baldwin will keep on speaking because he's so used to persuading people to believe his character. He has to dissociate as best he can from reality, become that character, and then persuade people that he really is that character. And also there's the element of elitism where someone believes their own hype. They believe they're above the consequences. that the average person is subject to. So let's take a look at this statement. My expectation remains the same. I didn't take performance-enhancing drugs. And if there was something in a supplement, I didn't know about it. That's my expectation. Very simple, very short, nothing to argue. In my 10-year career, he began, I have never tested positive for using performance-enhancing drugs. So the first thing we learn that he doesn't begin his statement with the pronoun I. We like to see that. We like to see that strong psychological presence right from the beginning. I'm going to commit to this information. Instead, he goes back over his entire 10-year career. So what he has done is he has elongated time. This was a test in November. We're going to have that date, or at least the month tag there, just a few months ago. We didn't ask you about your 10-year career, and what you've just told us is that you've never been caught. So in the last 10 years, I have been weekly to my bank's ATM machine, and I've never been caught stealing anything. And it's absurd. And what he has done is he's not only brought doubt to his presumed innocence, but now what's best is to look back over the years. Now, why would I look back over the 10-year period? Because he told me to. He's the one that went back 10 years, not me. I would have only gone back, I would have only known to go to November. That's when he tested positive. So he not only does not begin with the pronoun I, which is a signal that we might not get a lot of reliable information from him. And if you look here with the I, you know that he does know how to use pronouns. So it's not like this is someone that doesn't use pronouns, like a text message that is all lowercase or abbreviated, no pronouns. So his norm is going to be established with, and you'll see it over here, you'll see other pronouns I coming up. He's going to establish some presence here. So it's not completely out, but we like to see it start that way. So the first thing I said, I didn't use performance-enhancing drugs. And if the allegation is, well, somewhere in your 10-year career you used them, then someone could say, I've never used performance-enhancing drugs. But we like when someone is accused specifically in a specific period of time so that it can be addressed. Because guilty people like to do this. They like to, here is the allegation. I'm brought right to it. Let me weaken it. Let me water it down by stretching out over many years. So a politician's accused of inappropriate behavior with women. And he begins his statement by saying, let me tell you something. I have always been for women's rights. I've had women working for me for 30 years. It's like, that's not good. You were accused by one woman, and this was recent, and here's the date, and look at that, and answer that. Instead, the person is trying to inflate their image in order to project innocence. Now, I said I didn't use performance-enhancing drugs, and I don't care if you believe me or not, because I didn't. I'm telling the truth. I have no need to persuade you that I'm a good person. Now, there are some allegations that are so shocking that someone will say, I didn't do that. I'm not that type of person. I've never done something like that. And that's fine, as long as we have a denial in there. So I just want him, Hopkins, to deny it. In my 10-year career, I've never tested positive for using performance-enhancing drugs. He didn't say he never used them. He's just never been tested positive. That was one of the claims that Lance Armstrong made over and over again. Marion Jones, who went to jail for lying about it in the Olympics. So I now have a concern that not only is he not denying it, but he may have used over the 10-year career as well. He introduced that. Next, To learn that my November test came back with trace elements of a banned substance, I was confused and shocked. So what he's given us right here is his emotion. His emotion. And this is something that we call an artificial editing, because what he should be telling us is that he didn't use it. And he can tell us later at the end, he can add on, especially if he's asked what his emotion was. But he's going to offer that to us in a sentence that did not begin with the pronoun I again. And this is a subtle distancing from a psychological commitment, a desire to be upfront, the strength we call it. To learn that my November test came back with trace elements, and here is minimization. Instead of saying, I tested positive for something, which I don't know what it is, but I didn't use. It would have had to have been in a supplement. Even that's acceptable. So now, would you please pity me because I was confused and shocked? So what's confusing about it? Trace is only a small amount, so he may be minimizing. And what are elements of it? Is that plural in the language? Was there more than one substance that he tested positive for? But he wants the public, his fans, his teammates, ownership to know that he was confused and shocked. And this, I think, is a form of manipulation, emotional manipulation. Look at my emotions instead of listening to me deny it. Pity me as I am victimized by this. So let's go on the premise that he was victimized. That this was another one of those supplements that came from China, imported in, and had banned substances in it to increase the performance, to enhance his performance, to recover from workouts or whatever it would have been. Which would be easy enough to go get your supplements and bring them down to the lab and learn if that particular company has any history of that sort of thing. The NFL would be able to do that, the league. But he was confused and he was shocked. Which would be first? If this was you and you found out something within your system that you didn't willfully put there, it would be a shock, correct? He's got it reversed the other way. Confused first, then shocked. The shock comes first. Wait, what? I did what? But I didn't take that. Where did it come from? Now I might have some confusion about where it might have come from. Let me go get my list of vitamins and supplements and things. But first comes shock. So this is another reason why I call it an artificial editing into the statement to persuade. And he said, I am very mindful of what I put in my body, and I believe him. He's a top athlete, but I believe the statement itself, and have always taken a holistic approach. And I believe that as well. Not every athlete does that, but many do, especially in something as brutal as the National Football League. They've got to be strong constantly, and the competition is severe. How long has he been in the league? He's been in the league, or at least had this career, for 10 years. That's a long time in what they put their bodies through. And that's why sometimes you see athletes later on in life using HGH, using testosterone, exogenous testosterone, and other banned drugs that will enhance their recovery, that will give them an edge that they've lost over time. With the case of HGH, it's like an anti-aging, so it can affect everything. The hair, the fingernails, the sleep, the eye-hand coordination. Some of the things that begin to fade with age, HGH can restore that. There's other consequences to it, but that's why Hollywood calls it the miracle anti-aging drug. I am very mindful of what I put in my body, and I have always taken a holistic approach. So what he does here is we call this the normal factor. He's telling us what he does normally. He doesn't deny it. He doesn't deny it was in a supplement he took unwittingly, unknowingly, but he wants to, after he's finished with the emotions, he wants to make this to be a normal thing. Normalize a context, it's often an indication that it's anything but normal. So this suggests then by the normal factor is that he's well aware of what he did was not being mindful of what he put in his body and not being holistic. And he gives us the reason now that he feels the need, and this is very important for especially those of you who study, he has a need to give us the reason why when we wouldn't have asked him. So if he's going to claim that something was put in a supplement, he wouldn't need to tell us why he's going to have the supplement tested. Watch what he does. He's never tested positive in his 10-year career. So who doesn't test positive ever is a good guy. I'm a good guy, which belies the need to be portrayed in a positive light, suggesting to the contrary. He's the one with the need, not only to go back for his whole career, but make sure you think I'm a good guy and I'd like you to feel sorry for me. And I am so very mindful of what I put in my body. It's that reason why I am working with my team to investigate how this could have happened. So there's no reason to explain why they're going to look into his supplements or how something got in his body. There's no reason to explain that why. You do it, of course. You want to know, especially if it was a supplement. But tell me that. I take supplements. If that test is accurate, I didn't know what was in the supplement. So let's see if he believes his own words. So I'm continuing to be a good guy. I'm very mindful. And now I'll tell you the reason, because I'm concerned that you're going to ask me, well, why are you investigating? And if someone had issued a denial saying, I don't know how it got there, we wouldn't have said, why are you going to investigate it? There's no reason to explain that. Of course you're going to look into it. You're going to send it right off to the lab and let them take a look. But I am very mindful, and I believe him. I think he was quite mindful when he made the choice to do this after 10 years. But even as careful as I have been, clearly I wasn't careful enough. And you know what? It's not clear. It would have been clear if he had said, I didn't take anything purposely. Here's my supplement. They got to test this thing. I didn't know. So when the word clearly is used unnecessarily, generally speaking, it means the subject has clouded the issue. It's not clear to us. What we know is that you've never tested positive. You've never been caught, is what you're saying here. I've never tested positive for 10 years. I've got your emotions backed up and a little confusing there. And I know what you do normally, but I never would have asked you, well, why don't you investigate then? So it's been anything but clear And this shows his need to clarify, to make clear. I wasn't careful enough. What happened? For that, I apologize to Cardinal fans, my teammates, and the entire Cardinal organization. I never want to let my team down. And I believe him. I believe him on all these things. In fact, I'll go further than a lot of people, and I'll say, yeah, he wasn't careful enough. He got caught. He tested positive. He's suspended. And you know what? I'm not going to apologize to anyone because I did not take anything intentionally. If there was something in there, either the test is wrong or there was something in there I didn't know about, I'm not apologizing for that. I'm not accepting my suspension. I'm going to fight it. He is apologizing. He's saying, in that sense, we flag this, generally speaking, as I'm sorry, whatever reason, to Cardinal fans, to and my teammates, and the entire Cardinal organization. And I believe that team players don't want to let their team down. I get that. And then we already know he's going to investigate with his team. In fact, it's present tense. He's working with his team. And if you'll notice carefully, he tells you why he is working with his team. And that's unnecessary language there. There's no purpose to that, unless his purpose is to persuade us. This is reminiscent of things that people say where someone goes missing. And I know that I'll search for the rest of my life, like O.J. Simpson said that, to find the real killer, because he knew in his life it would never be anyone but him. I fully intend to get to the bottom of this. So as soon as I have information, I will share it. And he signed his name to it. That's in the statement. And so we're able to conclude that, number one, he did not deny the accusation. And there was a two-pronged accusation. He could have said, I didn't use performance-enhancing drugs, or he could have said, if it was something in my supplement, I didn't know about it. But he said neither. And one of our rules is that if someone cannot bring themselves to say it, we don't say it for them. We don't put words in their mouth. We listen to their words. I understand how I am someone that is a recipient of this information. This person is trying to persuade me. But by not denying it, he's talking me out of it, out of being able to trust that he didn't use performance-enhancing drugs. In fact, that he raises suspicions of not only false emotions, but over the last 10 years. And then there's a second part of that he didn't say was about something being in a supplement that he wasn't aware of, which can happen, but that's not what he's talking about. Clearly, he wasn't careful enough. And I believe him, whether using masking ingredients or anything else. He was not careful enough. And I trust that. So the conclusion of the matter is that he is deceptive. He is not telling the truth. So I'm not going to make that for him. And there's an expectation, and fans do this. And you even see this in crime, which is so strange, is where people will be willing to say what the person themselves was not willing to say. I see this still after 15 years in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann and others, the murder of John Benet Ramsey. So it's kind of a strange phenomenon. So when we listen believing. We presuppose that the person didn't do it. When a person makes a public statement, they presuppose something. They presuppose that you're going to have an opinion about this. Say, well, couldn't this person sue you? Well, sure he can. I don't believe him. I'm calling him on a lie. And if he'd like to sue me, he can. But what we're doing is the same when someone makes a public statement that's telling the truth, is we'll say, we believe this person, and here's why we believe this person. And when we don't believe someone, we'll say, we don't believe this person, and here's why we don't believe them. And of course, if someone sues, you get a chance to ask questions to them under oath, and that can be quite useful. But there is a presupposition of the person speaking that some people are going to believe them and some people will not. It's, I think, a shame that athletes get caught up in this. It's even more of a shame that they think they can be just as persuasive with their words as they are with their abilities, and that doesn't always work out very well. So I hope this was helpful. If anyone have any questions, I'll be glad to take them. Not a great deal of information here. It's one of those things that are a little bit comical at times, but there can be consequences, including suspensions. When there are younger kids involved, it's even worse. You worry about their health in the sports, and then when there's little children involved that are fans, that can be impactful on others. So thank you for joining me, and we'll see you again on another broadcast. Thank you and take care.